Hi, hello, welcome. I'm Ruth, and we'll be chatting about moderation. This is a fictional story where we follow Girly, who is really good at being a content moderator. And because of that, she's been promoted and recruited to work for a VR organization doing the same thing. So, content moderation in a VR world. Now, I can't imagine being a content moderator and what the stress and things that you have to see and flag because there's so much content that it's overwhelming and some of it can be very disturbing. So, thank you to all the content moderators that keep our internet safe. And to the flip side of that, it is difficult because there's a fine line between what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what then creeps into free speech. So that's where it kind of gets a little tricky. And then sometimes people can abuse their content moderation powers, right? We've all heard of the dramas when it comes to certain platforms where if you say a certain thing, you're going to get banned and things like that. So it is a fine line. But for, content that we know is wrong and explicit, that should be a no-brainer that people should not be fighting over. But unfortunately, some things still slip. But that aside, so this place takes place in the Bay Area. So I love all the Bay Area references, and I love that the beginning of this book was very strong because it was very eye-catching, very shocking, and it kind of draws you into wanting to know more about like this world of content moderation. The book cover, this is my fault because I was misled by the book cover because I thought it looked very artsy. So it kind of reminded me of the book Immaculate Conception. So I was thinking it'd be going into the art, but no, it was more about like social media VR world. So the book cover got me, but that is okay because that's what's special about just like wanting to read a book just by its cover or just because it's like calling you. So that was a surprise. And then the book mentions a lot of good show anime references. So the author has very good taste, in my opinion, on some of the things. So, for example, she mentions like Peaky Blinder, Evangelion, Call of Duty, Ghost of Tsushima, for example. So, all solid references in my opinion. So there's a quote I want to share that kind of describes the type of personality that a content moderator should have. I mean, there's so many images that are explicit, gory, that I can understand why maybe someone being a content moderator is a very high turnover position. And sometimes it's like a thankless job too. So I think this quote from her sums it up very well. The ones who remained, like her, were the wheat, the exemplars, tested paladins, the ones who didn't throw up in the hallway and leave the vomit here. They'd been, to continue speaking of it, biblically separated. So it's interesting that she would mention something like this because there's a parable in the Bible in Matthew where it talks about the wheat and the tare. And the gist of that is good and evil are mixed into each other because wheat and tare do look alike. But towards the end of the harvest season, you're going to have to separate the wheat and the tare when you harvest. So that's the gist of that story there. Unfortunately, I didn't really have any favorite characters in the book because I personally did not relate to any of them. While it was interesting to read about this, unfortunately, I think this author's writing style is probably not for me. So, for example, when reading this book, I really get the sense of this book kind of being a little bit of the Westworld vibe, some elements of it, but then I felt like it fell short because I felt like we spent more time in the real world than the VR world and actually seeing the moderation happening in the VR world. I don't know if this was the author's intention as well, but for example, one of the characters in Westworld is named William, and we also have William in this book too, with kind of similar power, similar wealth as the William in Westworld. I think the beginning was very strong, but then that's it. That's all you get from it. And I really wanted more of the moderation world because I don't work in that field. And I was very close to DNFing the book, but because this book is 307 pages, I just felt like I would just power through. But that was a point. I had to power through this book just to finish it. I didn't want to finish it. I just had to power through it. I didn't have to, but I just felt like, again, because the pages weren't as thick or the books weren't as thick, I could finish it. I didn't really care for the side characters. I thought they were just bleh. That's not really a good description of a side character or a lot of the side characters, but bleh to me. And then, the concept of VR moderation, very interesting. And I wished, again, this book spent more time on that instead of her real world drama. I also felt like Girly wasn't someone that I related to, and I just didn't like her as a protagonist. I felt she was very negative. Maybe because she's emotionless, that she feels very robotic and comes off as rude. And I don't know. She was very off putting for me. I did not like her as a female character. And very slow burn in my opinion, and also the way the story kind of dragged out reminds me of stories like Hum and The Librarian. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at there. So personally, this book was not for me. I'm glad I was able to check it out at 1 star. Please leave a like, comment, rate, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Did you like this book? Did you like this book? If you had any favorite characters, please let me know. Happy reading. I always do this. I forget. Also, the book structure, not cool. The paragraphs dragged out long. I'm not sure, again, if this was the intent of the author, but there's just too much paragraph breaks because there's so much changing in one chapter. So it's, to me, very confusing, because then I was thinking, am I really in the real world, or am I still in the virtual world? So it's confusing for me that the chapters were just too long with many changes in topics and themes within the same chapter. So, okay, signing off.